Let's come back to the region now. Tensions are escalating in Mozambique's capital, Maputo, as violent clashes have erupted in response to the recently announced results of the general poll. And following the early October vote, which saw the governing Mozambique Liberation Front party secure a significant victory, opposition protests have turned increasingly confrontational. And reports have confirmed that at least 11 people have since lost their lives in the unrest, raising concerns about stability in that particular region. Let's expand more on this now and welcome Advocate Sipho Mantula from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at the University of South Africa. Advocate, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the show. So, we're just yesterday commending the way that the people of Botswana have actually conducted themselves during as well as post the polls, exemplary leadership that respected the will of the people. And yet in Mozambique, the situation is quite adverse.
My sister, good afternoon and Jamba Africa to your viewers. I know that we'll want to make a comparative analysis between Gaborone and Mozambique, but Mozambique has a history of post-election disputes or post-election violence. And what we saw now happening only not yesterday, there are still more protests expected until only Thursday, because remember that the opposition have lamented since the 21st of October last month about how the Electoral Commission in Mozambique handled those elections. So you have this sense of the opposition members both are agreeing that there were some electoral irregularities. And what we see now, it is the tension that Mozambique, your DRC, if you look at the SADC region, whenever you have contestation of elections, there will always be casualties and there will always be under-reporting of looking them as violent. But when you look at also the force that is used by the police, the restraint that is being pushed by the international community. But when you look at the political assassinations that comes during elections or post-elections, you will see that those are the triggers and the push of this post-election that we see in Mozambique. And we might not be happy seeing statements coming from Tanzania, from Samia Suluhu, or from AU condemning the violence, but we need agency to handle post-election violence in the African continent.
I hear you, Advocate. What do you think is actually at the center of this violent contestation of poll results? Reports have already indicated that even well ahead of the elections, the incumbent president had warned against such protests and actually said these would be considered as criminal acts. But surely this type of stance then often signals a dictator-like environment where citizens feel their rights to voice their discontent are actually trampled upon.
No, correctly. But if you look at human rights organizations internationally, mostly rather than in the continent, they've already recorded dozens of arrests, killings of members of opposition. But if you look at the push and the pull or the triggers of this conflict or this post-election violence, I will say to you, it is the allegations that comes around that there were voters that were not supposed to have voted, they voted. You have the issue of vote buying. You have the issue of ballot stuffing. Those are electoral irregularities. But when I look at the Electoral Commission and the justice mechanism in Mozambique, what I have picked up is that there are many electoral irregularities than electoral offenses. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have this violence exacerbating or now becoming tense. Because what you see now is the economic effects in Mozambique, where you don't have businesses operating as usual. You have people not being free to travel between the borders of Mozambique. So you have a challenge of political economy that is threatened by political electoral violence, which I say to you has been triggered by those who are the midwives of elections, that the Electoral Commission has been denying all those allegations. But at this stage that we are in, it is the electoral dispute that Podemos, one of the oppositions, have already submitted an electoral petition with more than 100 pages alleging that there were irregularities. And one says that the Constitutional Council in that country, or the highest court that has to validate election results, it has also been seen to be biased or to be politically aligned to the ruling party. And that's how you have the miscarriage of justice and particularly electoral justice. So I'll say to you, my sister, the push and the pull factors of electoral violence in Africa is also being done by incompetency of our electoral management bodies. And like I said, the use of force by the police when you have these incidents or when you have these confrontations.
Very interesting points you raised there, Advocate. Something similar was raised in South Africa, but we didn't see this type of level of unrest in the recently held May polls. But Advocate, I mean, in democratic states, especially in the continent, there seems to be this notion by some leaders to not want to vacate office when voters clearly reject them. There were calls that bodies such as the AU need to look at creating new framework or legislation that will actually clearly outline how many terms an incumbent can actually serve. But such conversations, we know, are as good as the paper that they are written on. And in this case, yes, Nyusi did step down as per their constitution, but his party candidate still remains at the helm.
No, correctly, but you see that notion that you are raising of the third termism, the issue of how do you deal with electoral system and having Chapo as the new candidate coming into office, but you still have the same liberation movement, Frelimo, at the helm of power since 1975. The question is also that our regional bodies, they don't invest in the electoral justice system or electoral what are called voter education, where you'll have young people overwhelmingly saying that we are no longer linked or connected to the governing party or the liberation movement. When you look at Venice Mondlane, he has accumulated votes from many young people who are already not happy with the current governing party in terms of issues of unemployment, corruption, crime. The issues of the conflict in the north part of Mozambique around the fight over the oil has made even Mozambique young people to be angry with anything there. The unknown or the people saying, but Chapo is not known in the picture. And the issue of them also getting the 2/3 majority of going into parliament, it is also raising issues. But I'll say to you, my sister, it is important that whenever we have the mechanisms, whether we have the policies, the mechanisms in the African Union, in the SADC, it is also going down to the people. How do we connect with electorates? And how do we communicate even the outcomes of elections in most of the African countries? Because there is an issue now, as we are speaking, Mozambique is also cut out of the social media. They are no longer able to have access to information. So the information is limited. So that's how you have challenges if you look at how do we deal with this power mongering in African countries. But like I said to you, you have gross human rights violations happening in our neighbor.
Absolutely, Advocate. I mean, we are out of time. Thank you so much. But I mean, just wanted to point out that even though that country boasts 33 million people, there was actually a very low voter turnout that is also drawing a lot of criticism into the results that were actually published as being official. As always, Advocate, thank you so much, Jambo, for your input this afternoon. That is Advocate Sipho Mantula, the researcher at UNISA, on the ongoing post-election unrest that has seen about 11 people lose their lives in Mozambique.